Which half of my face is more beautiful? One of them, I do believe.
All I want is the perfect camera. All I want is the perfect camera.
So we got a little battle on our hands. Can you tell the difference color science wise? Why does Sony never get it right? Sony leads the industry in every spec you could ever want except the actual image. It hurts the soul. As you'll see, we took some comparisons. We got the 100 to 500 versus the 200 to 600. Thanks to Aiden Camera. Oh, whoa, that's a... They've demanded the logo size be increased. Let's all go to Aiden Camera tonight. So I have a bunch of comparisons coming. The Canon R6 Mark II, I'm gonna see, is it better than the EOS R original? I doubt it. And I just took it out for wildlife, so that's what we'll focus on today, of course. But so far, I hate it. I was doing some comparisons and I feel like the Canon EOS R was much sharper in 1080p. Have they ruined it? They might have. Sony, leave my life forever. Stop filming my face. You're not allowed. Go away. Now, before all you little noob kittens come out of the woodworks and tell me that, oh, A7S III is so much more expensive than the R6, that's not a fair comparison. You're a moron. Do you have any idea how much more expensive this lens is compared to this one? It ends up being like $250 more for the Sony kit. So yeah, stick it in your pants, buddy. I feel like this is heavier even without a camera body, but whatever. I gotta tell you, that flashing record thing is really annoying. It just, on Sony, it just stays red, and this is just flash. You're recording. Stop telling me that. All right, first shot of the day, I unfortunately didn't realize I was in HD 180p on the Canon, so it's 4K 120p versus HD 180. Not really fair comparison, but the Sony is sharper, I find, and it's better. So we have concluded that the Sony is the better purchase through this test. It's a Carolina Wren. How cute is that? I found the Canon was pretty good today in autofocus, but it was hunting a bit in 180p. Could be my settings, I'm not sure, but it definitely drifted in and out of focus sometimes. I just had a little box with an expanded spot, animal eye detect, and for the most part, not bad. So here's our first test. 4K 120p on the Sony, 4K 60p on the Canon, 10% crop on that Sony, and it's 600mm. So like you can see the extra reach. It is fantastic. And that really was the thing that I noticed most, was just the extra reach you get with that 600mm, slightly more tone, a little more 3D pop, dare I say. And it just, the Sony has the better, sharper image. I don't know about you, but when I'm doing wildlife and I buy a zoom lens, I'm usually at the end of that range. It's barely ever that I zoom back out and I'm like, oh, this is the better shot. Like, it's almost never. Here's Canon at its widest, 100mm, and you get this like wide shot, super landscape. Is that a good shot? Not really. I wouldn't want it. Then here's the Sony at its widest, which is like, it seems like a lot more punched in than just 100mm, but that's the truth. That's as wide as you can get on the Sony as the duck does yoga in its flexing abilities. And then here's the closest Canon can get at 500mm. Pretty tight shot for this little duck couple, just arguing about who makes dinner tonight. Who has to, oh, you lost a feather. Oh, you lose, you have to make dinner. That's the rule. And here's the closest with the Sony, 600mm. So what we're seeing is, I do believe for wildlife, the Sony is the superior range. I think for sports, I've heard people love to zoom back out. Oh, Johnny's about to catch the football. Johnny's gonna die in 14 years because of the concussions. You should have taught him music or art. Good father. So I just found 500mm wasn't really enough. At times it was okay, but I was really missing that 600mm on the Sony. It's like, oh, that's much better. Canon, you suck. Now here's a little HD 240p versus Canon's HD 180. if I'm looking at this, I feel like the Canon has the more natural looking image. Sony maybe like a little over sharpened. That could be my settings. Maybe I did that in camera. In fact, I definitely did, because it was looking too soft. But whatever. Canon has the more natural look, but not as good. If you punch into 200%, yeah, I'm seeing it. A little over sharpened, and that could be my fault on the Sony. And it definitely was. We've already concluded that. So Canon wins. Now, I definitely didn't take like $30,000 of gear out to just shoot ducks. There's a lot more here. It's Canada, it's winter time. That's very inviting to most species. Hardly any of them leave to go south. Why would they? It's nice and cold here. There's lots of things to eat. That's one of the things I'm always noticing, is just how many different animals come here for our Canadian winter, like flamingos, Bigfoot's lesser known cousin, rabbit boy, like so many things. I tell you, it's pretty sad that we're 2 years into the Sony A7S III's life, and I don't think it can be beaten right now. When ducks spiral wing flap their approval of your camera, you take notice. You realize you have the pinnacle, and then everything I pit against it fails. Ducks are doing backwards flips for the A7S III, and they're like, there's no animal I detect. I don't even care, man. Who cares? Like, if I'm being honest with you, it's just something I want. It's kind of cool to have the option, but like, put a little box, Sony's gonna focus on it. It just works. Now, what Sony will never have is color science that looks nice. Canon just looks natural and beautiful out of the box. We got the mergansers here, different types of ducks, Bigfoot ducks, some might say. So like, they look beautiful. The male with a couple females, but Sony did get the better shot. I'm not gonna lie to you. I saw this one duck and I was like, oh, cool, look at this. And then like, he was swarmed by women. He's a famous guy. And then the women were like, hey man, you single? But there was another male, and they did kill each other. Later, 3 males, 2 girls. Wow, that's something to behold, huh? What it is to be a duck. Oh boy. 3, oh wow, 1 each. 1 each. Now here's something I noticed as I'm looking side by side, just the purple skies of the Sony. Why is that? Why do you do it, Sony? Just Canon does it right. And I just, like, the Sony's sharper, you get more reach, but then the color science makes your eyes bleed. It hurts the soul. You can tweak these things. I'll show you later on. I tried to tweak the sky. I was like, you know what? And I just altered the blues, and it kind of worked. It can never get to the Canon's blue, though. It's a teal. It's fantastic. Now, one of the biggest selling features for the Canon R6 is it finally jumped up from 120 frames into 180. I feel like they didn't go all the way to 240 because the R3 does, and then you would not buy the R3. They always want to sell you something a little more pricey. So that's Canon's way of life. The cripple hammer just knocks off 60 frames for every whack, and it's painful, but it's a beautiful image. I mean, it's not as nice as the 4K 60, but it looks natural, and it's pretty pleasing. I don't know if there's magic in it, but it's decent. I would use it. I did use it all day. I feel like Sony's a little sharper, and you get that extra 60 frames. It's like, it does matter. It's a little slower and a little more magical. And the Canon looks a little nicer, a little more filmic even, but just not as slow. And then what's the point of even shooting the thing? I'm pretty sure I was in manual focus on both of these, just because no animal I detect is picking a bird in this maze. Like, it's impossible. So for most of my life, animal I detect is not even a thing that I worry about. And I'm not sure which I prefer, Sony or Canon for manual focus, because Canon's very different. You have to hold a button, at least I had to. I don't know, my menu system's different. But like, you hold a button and now you're manually focusing, and peaking turns on, and then you're going, and then you can let go of it and it'll just start autofocusing. I might even prefer that to Sony, because sometimes for Sony you press a button to just switch into manual focus, and sometimes I'm not sure if it's working or not. It's so annoying that the box stays if you switch into manual focus. But if you're in a center fix, that box disappears when you go to manual focus. But if you're in a zone or the flexible spot, those remain. And it's so irritating, and it's just hard to know. Am I in manual focus? I don't even know. So I think Canon's a little better. Now when we switch into 4K for both, obviously Sony has the higher frame rates, even though it's an alien purple sky that's not my world that I grew up in. I don't know, I feel like it's a little better. And the stabilization, I find that if you're standing still, Canon seems to have the better stabe. It's like more tripod-like. Sony's always swaying in the wind. But when you move and track something, I feel like Canon's maybe a little more jerky. A little more jerky are those moments. But who cares when you have a purple sky and your world is being taken over? Now, sometimes Canon autofocus struggled a bit, but for some reason, woodpeckers, it was nailing. Like, even though he's behind twigs, it was just latching onto his eye and like following it perfectly, at least on the back of the screen. I was like, wow, you really know woodpeckers. Now that brings us to one of the more annoying things I've ever had a camera do. Whenever you go into 4K 60, a big warning flashes saying, this might overheat sometime, be careful, buddy. Sorry about that. We suck. We don't know what copper is. And like you wait a good 4 seconds for it to stop, or you have to half press the shutter. So every time I'm switching custom modes between 180 and 4K 60, that thing comes up and I don't know how to turn it off. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, oh God, half press. Really irritating to my nervous system. But after finally getting to use this lens, everybody seems to love it. I don't know, man, it's a long throw to get all the way through that zoom range. Not sure I'm loving that, but for the most part I just left it out at 500 and then found my thing. There it is, because it wasn't long enough anyway. And then I thought I wouldn't like this tiny being so far away, but it works pretty well. My fingers do adapt, I think. Boom. It's okay. Not much to hold on to on this little flimsy thing, but it's not terrible. You can carry it. I saw a Kingfisher on the Sony. You can see the sways up and down just constantly. It's very hard to just hand hold still. You'll always see that, I think, until my technique improves, which it never will. Whereas on the Canon, you get a much less magical shot, 500mm, but I knew he was about to fly. We got him catching nothing because he flew into a terrible spot. He's an asshole. Now, of course, you can punch in APS-C mode 4K 60p, and it looks really nice. I felt it was even more stable, and I was like, okay, there's a life hack. But now you're like buying a full-frame camera for APS-C mode. That hurts. But it looked nice. When it comes to can I even edit these files 4K 60p with Canon's hard-to-edit codecs, it's doable. It does play. I can do it. I can't like scrub through and have fun while editing and okay, I'll just cut that there easily. I have to play and wait. It's somewhat doable. Stupid with your codecs. Now here's where I tried to edit the sky of the Sony to look more like the Canon. It doesn't at all, but it's less purple at least, and it looks actually pretty nice. Still not the same. I don't know what Canon does to do that. Blue skies that are actually blue, like a teal and orange. Wow, it's like a movie that you're watching. Canon. Sony's more like a digital tutorial, like an infomercial, and it's not very inspiring, but what is inspiring is sparrow footage in the slowest of varieties, and we got them. We got them side by side. Sparrow life is ours. I tell ya, slow motion is the key to my life, and Sony does it better. Unfortunately, it's slower. Canon R3, would that be nice? Now you're looking way more money than the A7S III, and would it be worth it? Probably not. Not with this lens. Canon needs another lens. There was one rumored to be coming. I don't know what it is. So first impressions of the Canon R6 and the 100 to 500, it didn't get in my way. There was never like a shot where I couldn't get the shot because Canon was like ruining my life. It was actually really easy to use. There was no user error that just happened where all my footage was ruined. Like, Canon's just pretty easy to operate. It's pretty lightweight for a full frame setup. It's not bad. It's not bad. Would I buy it? I don't know. I'm not sure. I would want a nicer lens somehow, but I feel like if Canon ever beats this lens, they're gonna beat it with a price so high that you couldn't even fathom it. It's gonna be like $7,000. I can't believe how overpriced this lens is for what it is, a 7.1 only reaching to 500. Like, it's nice. It's really nice, and it's your only real option unless you're adapting. And I don't know how that sync stabe's gonna work with an adapted lens. So it's the same old battle, Sony versus Canon. Sony will look a little sharper, a little more clinical, better autofocus, better reach. But then Canon will have a better look, basically. You do a side-by-side, people are like, oh, I like that Canon footage better. Even though it's softer, less specs, more money often. It's like, that's just the battle. That's the battle we have. I think I'm gonna take this out versus the GH6 with the 200mm prime, go to that farm again and see, does that, because the GH6 kind of held its own against the Sony, but it was not quite as good. I feel like this will be a closer battle. We'll try it. So thank you, Aiden Camera, for lending me the camera. I personally think it's pretty good. Not bad, Canon. You're a little pricey for what you are, but I could recommend you to some villages. And I'm gonna, ow, my neck. So we'll do a bunch more comparisons. I'll take this out for a vlog test, see what that's like. 24mm 1.4 could be magical with the stabe. IBIS finally. Is IBIS better than electronic stabe of the EOS R? I bet it isn't. So I'm gonna leave. Are you buying stuff? I've bought things. Affiliate links, huh? Subscribe for more videos, Sandy.